Welcome to Veronica Live, and I'm here with my statesman wingman, John Salek, today, and I am very, very excited about this interview. I bumped into him on X, and he was doing a show, and X is just where it is. If you're political and have passion and want to save our country, that's where you go. And we are so honored to have, I cannot believe that you've actually been in prison, but we have a J6er, and I actually heard about you before in like news reports, and joining Veronica Live for the first time is retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Larry Torch Brock, and he's an Air Force Academy grad, flew A-10s. You were in the military for 20 years. You served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. You're a Christian, father, Texan, lifelong patriot, and you love America. So, Torch, welcome to Veronica Live.
Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the American public.
Well, you know, I've had the author of the Gulag Chronicles, and then Sarah Maccabee, whose husband's still in prison, and then I bumped into you on X, and you've been out, so I wanted to talk about your story as a J6er, and so I watched all the videos that are on your social media, and so let's start from the beginning. How did you end up in Washington, D.C. on January 6th?
Well, I think as many people will say, that have worn the uniform, when you take the oath of office, it's a lifelong commitment to the Constitution. The oath has no term limits, if you will. And so as I watched the 2020 election unfold, I became more and more convinced that it had actually been stolen from the American people, and specifically the Constitution had been violated. The state of Texas argued it quite well. It was joined by 19 other states, and to his everlasting shame, and in a decision that I believe is as bad as Dred Scott, Justice Roberts, refused to take the case that Texas had that the Constitution had been violated. Specifically, the states changed the election laws to allow massive mail-in ballots, and we know what happens there: massive fraud. It's just so that's why I decided to go there. It was through careful studying of that, through looking at affidavits filed in both Pennsylvania and Michigan, watching testimony in front of the Michigan legislature. I did a ton of research on it, and I became more and more convinced that the election had been stolen. So I went to D.C. because the president asked us to go. Now, what I thought was going to happen, honestly, was that one of two things. Either Vice President Pence was going to man up and send the vote back to the states because of all the fraud, which is what he should have done, and that is a constitutional remedy, or President Trump was going to use the Insurrection Act, which is available to the President of the United States to take any measure necessary to restore the Constitution. So I thought one of those two things would occur when I was in D.C., and I wanted to be there to see it.
So you get there, and when I was watching all your social media, you said you went by yourself, and
yes.
So now you're there, and I've seen the videos. We actually had this minister that came on my show was there. He sent me videos. It seemed calm, but he did say he definitely thought there was plants throughout.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I'm not trying to plug my show, but tomorrow I've got another J6 political prisoner, JD. I always want to say Vance for obvious reasons, but and he JD Rivera, and he is on tomorrow. He worked on a film called The War on Truth, and in it, probably the most striking thing you will see is actual military movements and signaling that went on amongst the agitators in the crowd that day. Now, getting back to what I said, I can't remember if you said a priest or a reverend said, he's absolutely right. I saw absolutely no violence with two exceptions. The first was when I saw a man that was being chased by another J6er, and I stopped that J6er from chasing him. And then got in the way between him and another guy. It turns out that was a Capitol police officer. His name is Nairobi Timberlake, and he testified in my trial on the stand that I had acted to protect him. Specifically, he said I'd used my command presence to defuse the situation. So I didn't see any violence until that incident. And that, I walked right in the Capitol through open doors, right by 4 Capitol policemen in riot gear. They didn't say a word. As a matter of fact, you have no idea how much I wish they had said a word. I mean, I've lost almost everything in my life because they didn't speak up. If they had just said stop, or if a barrier had been in my way, I would not have crossed. I would not have gone in. Now, you can argue that as a military guy, I should have known not to go into a restricted building. Fair enough, but if you walk into a building and you see police standing right there, people walking in and out of it, you're on the outside there, natural curiosity might be to go in and take a look around, which is what I did. So, as far as that goes, as far as I'm concerned, I walked into the building. I never passed a restricted area sign. I never saw any barriers because the RAEP's breach team had already done their work. The ski barrier fence remover had already done his work. And so, again, depending on where you were, like if you were on the northwest side of the Capitol, that's what you saw. You saw no violence. If you're on the southwest side or the east side of the Capitol, things got dicey. So again, I can't explain from a military point of view why there wasn't some type of unified response by the Capitol Police. That's among the many questions
well,
that linger.
I have questions because
go ahead.
When Trump first won the election, I was a Trump chair here, and so I went to the inauguration up there, and there was barbed wire everywhere, fencing everywhere. You couldn't get into any areas. And when you look at the video, because on your social media, you show yourself in there, and I would have been like you, walking through an open door, because you couldn't tell. I mean, of course, there was a few crazy people, but you couldn't tell. If everybody's walking through a door, we're probably going to follow.
You're exactly right there. Now, one of the things the prosecution brought up in the trial is that I should have known people were going in windows. The next time you walk into a stadium, I don't know about high school football in Florida, but it's big in Texas. As soon as you get through the turnstiles, try and take a look and see, if you remember who was on your left or your right. You're probably not going to remember.
Everybody's going. I've been to tons of college games.
Exactly. So you know what I mean there. So I did not notice that, the people were going through windows or that the windows had been broken because I didn't see any glass. Again, I'm in a crowd. I'm not looking down necessarily at my feet at that time, and unless I had stepped on something, which I didn't until later on. So go ahead.
Well, you're in there now. And so the Air Force Times story, it's very negative about you. Very negative. And the judge wasn't nice either. So talk about, you went in the Capitol, and then there's on your social media, you're showing video of you and a lot of your movement through this, and you're not violent. No. So how did you get that video? I wanted to know. Is that what Tucker released?
It was supplied by the Department of Justice. I didn't do anything to that video. That is all the evidence that they used against me in a court of law. Now, I have edited it, and I have, spotlighted myself in places to make it very visible to the American people, because you're absolutely right when it comes to me. The Air Force Times and the media in general lied. They needed a boogeyman, if you will, for this. They needed a bad guy in military gear. I am everything this administration hates. I am a conservative American who believes in the country, the rule of law, and the Constitution, and I am their biggest threat because people that will stand up to them, they want to slam into the dirt because they want to establish, absolute despotism, which they're on their way to doing if we do not succeed in reelecting President Trump.
So when you, I have so many questions, George. We need beer. Somebody start pouring beer for this, or whiskey.
It's a little bit early for me here in Texas, so I'm gonna hold off on that for a bit. However, at the end of the day, I will have a Corona. That is definitely on my list.
Okay. Well, John and I are coming over. Make sure you got a lime there. So
I do.
So you go through this, and then there's in every story talked about how you picked up the plastic hand tie zip ties. So talk about that, because I mean, at that point when you were in and you were telling people to get out of Pence's chair, was it going a little more south at that point, you noticed?
I still, again, other than that one guy that had been chased at that point, I hadn't seen anything really negative. So, as you mentioned, all right, I walked down and there was a crowd surrounding a couple of Capitol policemen asking them politely to open the doors and let other patriots inside, which they didn't do. Now, I'm circulating the crowd, and I step on a pair of flex cuffs. You can see this plainly in the video. Okay. I take a couple more steps, and I see another one, and I pick them both up. Now, I grab them because my intent was, if they're in my hands, nobody can do anything bad with them. But here's the problem. All right, and this is something I'm going to regret for the rest of my life. I gave the left, the Communist Party of the United States, a beautiful photo opportunity of a conservative American holding a set of flex cuffs, and it enabled them to lie. And Eric Swalwell, the congressman and Chinese communist spy, actually said this in President Trump's second impeachment, that I brought those there to go after Mike Pence. What would have happened if I had found him? So here, you mentioned something earlier. You said that I had told somebody to get out of the vice president's chair, to be respectful of the chair. So how is it that a man in the heat of the moment is telling somebody to respect a man's chair, and yet I'm theoretically there to hurt the guy? No. The cognitive dissonance on display in making that leap was amazing, and yet that is exactly what I saw out of the U.S. Attorney for North Texas in my arraignment hearing on the 14th to determine whether or not I could actually go home after January 6th, or home confinement as opposed to remaining in jail. So again, the DOJ, and I hope you're listening, he deliberately and willfully misled the American people in order to promote their false narrative of an insurrection. That is what that U.S. attorney did, and that is why when President Trump wins, these attorneys, these judges, and in some cases, these FBI agents will be brought to justice under Title 18, Section 241, conspiracy to commit crimes to deprive an American citizen of their rights, and 242, depriving an American citizen of their rights under color of law. Many people have talked about this. President Trump's team is discussing this as well. Okay, we have to fix this. We cannot have political prisoners in the United States of America, which is exactly what we have now.
Okay, so now when Ashley Babbitt was killed, was that happening at the same time, like that you were in there? Did you know? When did you know about her being killed? I did not know about her until I actually left the Capitol, and I was walking back towards my hotel, and somebody said that they shot and killed a woman. Now, that was on the east side of the Capitol. Oh, okay.
And again, the movie that I'm going to discuss tomorrow, The War on Truth, it is absolutely horrific what Michael Byrd did to her. This is an unarmed woman that had assaulted the Antifa member that was breaking a window. Now, she was trying to climb through that window, and there is no excuse for that. But she's unarmed, and he just flat out shoots her in the neck, and she died. I mean, it is murder by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm very, very glad that there is no statute of limitations on murder, because Michael Byrd was one of 3 Capitol policemen that murdered J6ers on that day. The other one being Officer Lila Morris, who beat Roseanne Boylan to death with a stick. And there's a third unidentified Capitol policeman as of yet that hit a man in the chest directly with a flashbang, and it caused him to have a heart attack and die. Now, they are not supposed to put those flashbangs, at eye level. So they're shooting down into a crowd, and that is against doctrine of the Capitol Police as well as the Metropolitan Police Department. They were supposed to give warnings which weren't heard. Again, this was officer murdering J6 protesters. So, again, another massive lie is that officers, Capitol policemen, died on that day.
Well, and Kamala just said that during her debate.
Yes, ma'am.
So
yes, she did.
I just feel like they just push these narratives out there, and people that don't know the story think it's all true.
Absolutely right. And I think it's either Stalin or Mao, forgive me, a lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. It could even be Goebbels. It's the same playbook over and over again amongst totalitarians. But there were 4 January 6ers that died that day. 3 of them were directly attributable to police action. The 4th one, it's potentially, and he could have just had a heart attack based off of stress. Now, there's some other questions, but that one we don't have video of. The others that I've talked about, we have direct video evidence showing, what these officers did on that day to murder these protesters.
Well, and I've heard that's one of the reasons why they haven't released all the video is because it shows how brutal they were that day.
Yes, ma'am. And again, the war on truth, it shows, they fired ordnance into a peaceful crowd, and they were very stupid about how they did it because the wind was blowing against them, and they fired CS gas into the crowd that was going to blow back on top of the officers. They fired rubber bullets at people without any warning, with nothing being said. And again, the fencing had been removed by a guy that's unindicted. The barriers had been removed by Ray Epps and his breach team. And if you were to follow Ray Epps throughout this whole
thing... So are those FBI plants? Those two
we don't know. We don't know who they work for. My guess is either FBI agents, CHS informants, or HSI agents. Homeland Security Investigations, I think is what that stands for, or their CHSs as well. There are clearly documented, unindicted personnel. An example, the man that removed a window, peeled it off, had an earpiece in, and then when he noticed he was being filmed, he suddenly turned coat. But again, we see the Columbia doors being opened from the inside. They're magnetically locked. You can't unlock those just by pushing on the doors, and yet somehow somebody in the Capitol Police magically opened the doors. Again, this will come out if we can get a brave whistleblower to come forward as a government setup. Now, I'm still guilty of being an idiot. I walked into their trap, and I wish I had, like I said, if I'd seen any violence, I wouldn't have done it, but I gave the left a tremendous photo opportunity, and I am part of a weapon that they have used against the American public and conservative Americans for 3 years, and they're going to continue to do it as long as their lies continue to be spread.
And were the cops screaming everybody get out, this is
no,
federal whatever, out, nobody's allowed in?
No, that's the really crazy
no
thing.
Intercom
so for all
system. Were fire alarms going off?
See, you're thinking like a military person, because normally there would be what's called a giant voice.
Yes,
warning
right.
I used to run that as a command post controller. Oh, I hated that thing.
Correct. So yeah, no, there was nothing like that, and that's what I'm saying. I was shocked at the lack of unified response. I was shocked that there wasn't any type of alarm or siren going off. You would think that there would be something, but there was nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So I know I'm jumping all over because I have so many questions. So
that's okay.
When Trump asked Pelosi for the 10,000 people to secure the zone, this is why I think this is all a kabuki theater. They wanted this to happen.
Yes, ma'am. I absolutely 100% believe that. And something that, I did not know because I was inside the building, it's even worse than that. There were signal flares going off on top of the Capitol, so that both sides of the breach could talk to each other or send signals. There was, and again, I am not a land force guy.
Yes,
ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Did you see that, or at that point you were already in the building?
I was in the building at that time. If at one point red smoke goes off, and again, I was in the Air Force, as you know, and so, but I'm told by guys on the ground that usually means what's called an avalanche, which means egress the area immediately. And so the second that red smoke went off, you can see Ray Epps guarded by 4 in front and 4 in the rear, leaving the area immediately. So again, this was a coordinated military operation. Were you going to see,
did you see any politicians, running out, because where was AOC?
No,
at some point she said she was in harm's way, and I don't even think she was near the building.
No, I think she was in either the congressional office building or near that. She wasn't in the Capitol at all. And then, let's get back to another lie that Kamala told at the debate. Kamala Harris said that she was in the Capitol. Okay. She wasn't. She left at 11:30. The breach didn't occur, I think, until 1:50 something. So again, she was at the DNC. Now, at the DNC, there was...
Which had a pipe bomb. That's
yes,
exactly right.
Nobody talks about the pipe bomb at all. You know.
You're absolutely right. So there's two smoking guns to unravel, the J6 federal entrapment operation. And the pipe bombs are one, and the other one is Ray Epps. That guy needs to be apprehended immediately as soon as President Trump is sworn in. And then, until he decides to talk, he needs to sit in prison. And we can figure out a way of making that happen because he is neck deep in this whole thing. Look at it. They gave him one misdemeanor. The rest of us, for just walking in the building, we get 6 misdemeanors. It's lateral overcharging is what that's called. And I know I'm all over the place now too. But, yeah, it's Kamala Harris left the Capitol at 11:30 in the morning. She wasn't anywhere near there, and she has the gall and audacity to lie about that and the officers, dying on January the 6th. The whole thing is Democratic poison that they are injecting into the American body politic, which is why I encourage every J6er to tell their story.
So do you think the January 6th, the Capitol part of it, was just a event of opportunity, for lack of a better word? That the original plan was to do the pipe bomb thing and then have Kamala Harris go to the DNC and then claim they're trying to blow her up. But the Capitol happened then, and it was like, oh, this is much better. Is that kind of what you think happened?
Yes, sir, I do. And I have, again, I've got to verify this, but what I've been told is that Congress was initially put in recess because of the discovery of the pipe bombs. So, again, from a military standpoint, the RNC and the DNC are away from the Capitol building itself. So with the discovery of a pipe bomb assets from the Capitol,
why wasn't everything in lockdown at that point as a command post person?
Exactly. Again, you're trying to apply military logic to a situation that is not going to work because it was deliberate military operation to do this to the government. Now, there's a couple of other guys that are really critical, and in my opinion, the DOJ is trying to, one, have one of them hurt while he's in prison, and two, they're trying to make it to where the mental competency of the second one is questioned. Now, Jeremy Brown is a J6 political prisoner. He was a major, I believe, in the Green Beret, and he says he's got evidence that's going to uncork all of this. They keep pushing his trial back. As a matter of fact, recently they just moved it from, it was supposed to start on September 6th, now it's December 17th. But they threw him, rather than him being in the Patriot pod with the other J6 prisoners, they have him in the general population inside the D.C. gulag.
Oh my gosh.
Now, again, you're at a higher level of risk. We've written multiple congressmen and senators about this, and again, the DOJ is just trying to do this. There's another guy in Fort Worth that's a Green Beret as well, and they said, this guy in Fort Worth also worked for the Central Intelligence Agency, and I'm trying to confirm that he may have been involved in the color revolution in Ukraine, but he says it's exactly what they did over in the Maidan revolution in Ukraine is what they did, on J6. They tried to amp up the crowd using crowd control techniques, that type of thing. So he is currently in Fort Worth. They're giving him a mental evaluation. Now, again, we want to trust our government as Americans, but this is right out of the Soviet playbook. Question the political or the mental sanity of people that oppose you politically. And I'm looking forward to the truth coming out at some point in time. It sounds crazy, but look at what we've seen with the president in the last, 42 days? We have 3 assassination attempts. Tell me the deep state's not trying to do something to this man. I mean, you've got to be kidding me on this.
Okay. I'm scared doing this interview, and I have so many questions.
Well,
keep going. I apologize. Hey, and shut me up if I start filibustering you, and we're not getting to where you want to go.
It's an honor to have you on here because the story needs to be told. And like Sarah, when Sarah told her husband's story, and then I can't think of the author that wrote the Gulag Chronicles right now because I have all these questions coming to my head. So, okay, so obviously it was going south. I mean, when you walked away, did you feel like you were going to be in trouble? Because like Sarah tells a story, right. Her husband was trying to protect, a cop getting beaten up, and plus, military, and her husband was a cop. So we go into modes of helping people and doing the right thing because that's how we're wired. You were a fighter pilot, A-10 fighter pilot who's been to war,
right.
Air Force Academy. So when I first heard that, oh my gosh, what, a fighter pilot? Like, you're part of my family. And so I was like, what the hell?
Yep.
So, oh my goodness.
Well, again, all right, now I'll get to the the thing that they really used against me. But let's answer your question. So I had the zip ties. I walked by like 12 police. You can see it on the video. Finally, after I had been on the Senate floor, I decided it was time to leave, and I walk up to a D.C. Metro policeman in riot gear and say, "Hey, I don't know where the nearest exit is. Will you tell me where to go?" And he said, "No, but I'll walk with you." So him and I are walking and talking just as if you and I were walking down a hallway in any building. All right. They hid that video. They lost that video. So we get to a police line, and there's 8 or 10 guys, and you can see this on my video as well. And some shirtless guy was getting in their face and confronting them.
Yes.
So they finally let me pass through the line, which I do peacefully, and I put my hands between the shirtless guy that was being slightly boisterous and say, "Hey, don't do this, let's go," and then I walk him away. Now to your second part of your question. I didn't know it was going to be bad because I had not seen any violence the way, the American people were watching on TV until I got to my hotel room. I turned on Fox News, and almost instantly I was like, this is going to be bad. So I flew back to Texas the following morning, honestly surprised that I was able to get on the plane. Took care of a few personal things so the FBI couldn't make me look like I'm an arms dealer or anything like that because I know how they are. And then I started receiving death threats that Thursday night from the American left. At the time, I lived in a one building.
How did your name get out there? Torch? Like, how? What the hell?
I facial recognition software is what they claim. I don't know. What I do know from testimony and trial is that the FBI had my name and number by noon on Friday, but they chose not to call me.
From your cell phone tracking, I assume, right?
Probably, yes.
Yeah, illegal geofencing.
At noon on Sunday, they finally called me and said they wanted to talk to me. Now, you asked, did I know I was in trouble? I knew that it was bad, but I wasn't sure that I was in trouble because my actions had been entirely peaceful.
Okay.
Now, what I didn't know is that they were going to dig into a private conversation I was having with a Green Beret guy. Now, I'm thankful that you're married to a fighter pilot because you know how we talk. So
yeah, the Alpha Boys, they're
right. We have very grim and evil conversations, which I define, to civilians as military locker room talk.
Yes.
We are guys that actually use the word kill and kind of mean it because we've done it. And so I'm talking to a Green Beret that had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And there was a book called Adjustment Day by Chuck Palahniuk, same guy that wrote Fight Club, same twisted type of logic and humor, so you know where I'm going with this. But in it, there was a very farcical takedown of the U.S. government. And so I was like, could it even be done? So I started talking with my friend. This is private conversation,
like
not
on
Facebook
the phone,
posts, like it's been reported on the phone, in text message, and on Facebook chat, because at the time, my job took me overseas. So I was instant messaging my friend at times on Facebook when I couldn't, it would have cost me money to text him. All right. And we were just going back and forth on this. So, they took that chat, the conclusion of which was that the U.S. government could not be overthrown, too much defense in depth, too many centers of gravity. You can't do it. So that was our conclusion that we came to, but they used that.
This is before the January 6th. Is this what's mentioned in the Air Force
this is before.
time? Okay, yeah, because it says in here, in a Facebook message to another user on Christmas Eve, Brock outlined what he called a plan of action if Congress fails to act on January 6th. One of the main tasks in his plan was to seize
No. I hold on. They're conflating the two.
Okay.
Again, that's mis or disinformation. So it was, if we're going to take over, what could we do? I don't believe they were linked. I'd have to go back and look at it again. I don't think I linked January 6th to that. I think they did that for you, the reader.
Okay. And then it talks
about... Now,
does
it say that again? I haven't looked at that in a long time.
Well, it just says, let's see, begin interrogations.
No, this is Air Force Times or me?
Yes, this is the Air Force Times. But they're quoting you. They're saying,
don't believe it.
they are like, begin interrogations using measures we used on Al-Qaeda to gain evidence on the coup, he wrote. His plan of action also called for a general pardon for all crimes up to and including murder of those restoring the Constitution and putting down the democratic insurrection. Do not kill the LEO unless necessary. So who's the LEO? I didn't know what that meant.
law enforcement officers.
Oh, okay.
Again, so you've got all this horrible verbiage, right? So
yes, it says that you were disturbingly premeditated, is what it says in this article.
Okay.
Torch.
Fair enough. So why didn't I bring a gun?
Yeah.
Or guns? Why didn't I coordinate with anyone else? I mean, you can't do this by yourself. I mean, I consider myself a powerful fighter pilot, but I don't have that much power.
Not when you don't have a jet strapped on your body or a tank killer.
I've got absolutely nothing, not even a pocket knife. And yet I'm supposedly trying to take over the U.S. government. That's how preposterous this is. Now, I don't know the exact number, but just within probably 50 miles of Washington, D.C., I bet you there are at least 10,000 United States military members. I mean, think about it. The Pentagon, Quantico, just those two alone, I bet you I'm getting close to 10,000.
Yes, right.
Correct. So, and yet 1,500 unarmed people are supposedly going to take over the government in insurrection. Give me a break. I mean, this is...
So what were you thinking when you walk through the door, Torch? What were you thinking? Because I'm telling you, I put on 6 rallies. I've attended some. Doors open. You're walking through them like a dingbat. You're walking through. You're following the crowd. Now, after this, I'm petrified.
I wanted to go. Well, that was their intent. That is exactly why they're doing this.
Do you think
what was
the
I
cops
thinking?
knew? I know I'm asking you so many questions. The cops working in there because the dude was talking to you, walking you to the door. No. Or do you think they were just a clueless bunch?
I think some of them did. I think I think her name is Yolanda Pittman. She was the lieutenant that deliberately withheld evidence that the rally was going to be that large and that people had made threats against the Capitol. I think some, again, both things can be true. Just like there can be bad actors in our crowd that went in and attacked police, as well as, people that were just peaceful walking through. I think some Capitol policemen knew and some did not. Now, what was I thinking? I wanted to see what was going on inside the building. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see history. Now, obviously in hindsight, given what it's cost me, the opportunity cost of that equation was tremendously stupid. However, I did not anticipate the level of vitriol from the U.S. government directed at people, who had not done the things that had gone on in the Summer of Love. Again, remember the what we had seen as conservative Americans since George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. We had seen massive riots, cities burning. You talked about being at Trump's inauguration. The city of D.C. was on fire, and every charge had been dropped against those protesters. My attorney at the time thought I would just get some misdemeanor charge.
But when I went to the inauguration, Torch, it literally was in lockdown because they had those women in the vagina costumes running around. And I mean, the city was in lockdown. It was very hard to move through it. So that's why fast forward to J6, I was like, well, when I was there, it was you couldn't just, free for all.
Like you said, all right, it's a government operation. There is just the lack of planning, the lack of security, the hostile actions, the breach points, the pipe bombs. I mean, it's the military specifications are pretty startling. Our pipe bombs were supposed to go off at 20 minutes prior to the initial Ray Epps-led breach. Ray Epps said to Ryan Samsel, "Not yet. We need the crowd to build up more." What did he mean by not yet? What did Ray Epps mean when he sent the text message that said, "I orchestrated this"?
So how did all of that come out? The Ray Epps stuff. How did we get that part of it?
Well, he's on video.
Well, we got that from Darren Beatty. He's the one that initially of Revolver News did. Darren Beatty and Julie Kelly are the two best reporters on January 6th.
Absolutely.
Unearthed a ton of stuff. And so Darren Beatty said, "Meet Ray Epps." That was his first article, and it's on Revolver News still. And it talks about the fact that he had been unindicted, that he was on the FBI's watch list. This is the man, and you've probably seen him in all the videos, the night before.
I'm looking here now. Yeah, he looks familiar.
We've got to go into the Capitol. He's at all 3 critical breaches. And again, the movie, The War on Truth, that I'm going to talk about on my show tomorrow, we're going to walk through all of those breaches that he's at. This guy he knows exactly what was going on. That's why he has to be apprehended, and we have to get the truth out of this man.
So he's working for the enemy, is what you're saying. So,
the problem. I still struggle to call my fellow American an enemy, but yeah, he is working for, I believe, operatives that are trying to hide the truth about January the 6th. I think I would prefer that phrasing again. But Kamala Harris, as much as I despise her, is not a domestic enemy. She's just a horribly misguided woman.
But you're talking about the government orchestrated this. Okay, this was a government op. Okay, that's the part that concerns me because when they called
to death.
When they called Director Wray up there and they asked him were there FBI agents or operatives in that crowd, he would not answer. And the senator chastised him because he said the answer should be no. But he wouldn't answer, which means the answer is yes, there were.
No, he knows that. Director Wray knows that. Again, he's culpable as well. I mean, all of these guys that engineered this thing and that have conspired to hide the truth, honestly, they have to be brought to justice. We cannot have this happen in America again. Director Wray is, he's been asked multiple times. He's never answered the question, and he bows up. He puffs out his chest and says, "If you're suggesting that we had any part of this, it's just simply not true."
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. They had a large part.
It's just too well. It's too well orchestrated. Turning down the National Guard. Trump offered them the National Guard. And Pelosi and the mayor of D.C. said no.
Who says no to that?
That really,
none of us.
And that shocked me because I had heard. But the thing was, before January 6th, 2 or 3 days, there were rumors floating around, and I heard this, that there was going to be some kind of tussle going on, with the Antifa people showing up in Washington to counter this Trump rally.
Whoever turns down security,
and nobody talks about that part of it. What happened to all that intel that the FBI supposedly had on that?
Again, it is baffling. Now you're right. Who turns down security? Well, somebody that wants something to happen does. Who tells her daughter, "Hey, be here to film a documentary"?
Film stuff, yep.
Yeah, but she didn't know what was going to happen. Now you brought up a good point when you talked about Antifa and BLM. There were a lot of people that asked that same question. Hey, they've been fighting Trump supporters at the 2 previous rallies. Where are they today?
Yep.
And you say, well, again, so something else that was brought up against me in trial. Well, why did you have body armor and a helmet? It's called personal protective equipment. Okay, you don't do anything offensive with it. That Antifa and BLM had attacked Trump supporters at the 2 previous rallies in Washington, D.C. I thought I was being prudent and smart. Now, I had also been in Iraq in 2020 and been forced to wear that stuff almost every single day, due to the threat from Iranian rockets. And as it turns out, I was there when the Scud missiles hit from Iran, hit al-Assad Air Base. So again, wearing PPE to me was second nature. Now, you're going to be able to, if you dig deep enough, unearth me saying, "Hey, I bought this today for the Second Civil War." Yeah, I said a lot of stupid things in the heated rhetoric. But again, it was all talk. I've always believed that the purest measure of a man's intent are his actions. And my actions on that day were to protect
you
Capitol
see it
Police.
on your X in the video that you had out there. You're just a calm dude. You told the dude to get out of the Pence chair. It looked like you walked through a door and you just followed around. And you're like, okay, well, I don't need to be here, and you left after that. So, okay,
and then the judge gives me 2 years in prison for that.
Okay, so that's what next. Next, so you get the call.
Just curious, was your service history a plus or a minus in any of that?
Yeah.
The only thing, it was a minus at trial to convict me, but it was a big plus in terms of sentencing because the government wanted a 6-year sentence. And I had the good fortune. And again, I've always said that, you have to have an opportunity to do something brave. And so I had the good fortune a couple of times in Afghanistan to really, really risk my life to help guys on the ground. And again, I'm not bragging. There's lots of guys that have had that chance. But, I had to do something that most guys don't normally do, which is, let myself down below the weather at night in the mountains using hand-jammed INS points. So let me talk civilian for a second. So we have a system on board the airplane where I can build points based off of a map, and the airplane will fly to those points, or it will give me guidance, steering guidance to those points. So that's what I did is I plotted at night, 4 or 5 points that would not hit the terrain, and then I let myself down through the weather to get below the weather into a mountain valley so that I could attack bad guys that were attacking American soldiers. So now, why is that particularly brave? That doesn't sound brave. You're just plotting coordinates. Well, it's at night. These are, usually 8 to 12 digit coordinates. I think honestly it might have been 10 in that case, if I remember right. And if I misplace one button, one wrong keystroke, I could go flying into a mountain at night. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I wasn't able to drop the bomb the first pass. I had to make multiple passes, and then I had to reveal myself by puking out overt flares because he couldn't see me because his night vision goggles had been shot off his face. So instead of shooting at the enemy, they were now shooting everything at me. But they missed, and all is good. But again, I think that letter from a major general in the Air Force shaved probably 4 years off of my life. And there's some other things
so did you get like a distinguished flying cross for that?
Yeah.
Torch? Okay.
I did not, just an air medal for that. And then I got promoted below the zone to lieutenant colonel. Again, a lot of these things, it depends on who your commanders are. And I had a great commander at the time, but the problem is the ops group commander wouldn't let anything go through like that because he felt like that was your job as an Air Force guy. And again, I don't.
Normally, it's the opposite way because fighter pilots,
correct.
They take care of each other. That sounds harrowing to me.
I don't. I didn't fight for medals. The thing that I get to take with me is, I got a letter from a guy on the ground. It wasn't that mission. It was another one. Believe me, that guy was thankful too that I had saved. But it was my previous trip in Afghanistan. He'd sent a letter that said, "Hey, because of you, I get to go home to my wife and daughter." So, I'll take that to my grave.
Yeah, that's better than any medal, for sure.
Okay,
absolutely.
So, you get the call. You're back in Texas. Is that where you were when you got the FBI call?
Yeah, that was on January the 10th, which was a Sunday. And they called me and said, "Hey, we'd just like to talk to you." And I was relieved. As a matter of fact, I had lunch with my mom and stepdad that day, and I said, "I'm relieved," because I thought, they were going to try and bust down the doors and arrest me.
Okay.
Well, they'd been trying to. But I'm a little bit smarter than your average bear because of some of the work I did as a reconnaissance pilot. So I know how to get rid of my cell phone signal to where you can't see it. There's that, but at the same point in time, I was just staying with my dad. They could have Googled, my dad's name and found the house pretty easy. But they did not come and get their show arrest, which is what they wanted. So they call me and tell me they wanted to meet. I said, "Great. My lawyer, I've been expecting your call. My lawyer will coordinate with you." So we coordinated a meeting at my lawyer's house. And then, because I think the FBI knew which way the wind was blowing, they said, "Hey, change one. Let's meet at the Grapevine Police Station." And they wanted me to meet them.
So did you know at this point, had J6ers been arrested? Is that why you knew you needed a lawyer? Or you're just smarter that you knew that you need a lawyer just because you're talking to the FBI?
Yeah, all right. So, I knew that I needed a lawyer. Okay, it's the old adage, and again, we've all been in the service. So, your commander's your friend right up until he reads you your rights. And then you need to shut up and get a lawyer. The fact that you guys are laughing tells me you know what I'm talking about or what I'm saying is true. So,
Torch is still a fighter pilot, everyone. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Your commander's your friend right up until he reads you your rights. So, but yeah, and so I knew I needed a lawyer. But on my way to go and meet, well, actually, I was driving a friend back, and on my way to after I dropped her off, my lawyer called me and told me, "Hey, they just issued a warrant for your arrest." How he found that out, I don't know. But I'm very thankful that he did, because what it did is it enabled me to turn myself in an hour early. Now, the FBI wanted me to meet them at the Grapevine, which is a small city in Dallas-Fort Worth jail, at 4:30. I turned myself in at 3:30. And I did that because I knew the FBI. I know who they are. I hate them even more now. But I didn't like them at the time. And they had a bunch of press show up at 4:30. Well, how do you know that? You were in jail. Because my nieces came to pick up my car, and at 4:30 all the press was there, and they got asked questions.
They wanted the picture of you being arrested.
Yeah, they wanted the purple walk. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, they did.
Oh gosh.
Now again, this is the same time that somebody inside the DOJ, and again, this was still Trump's DOJ at the time, had said that they wanted a shock and awe campaign against January 6ers. So I believe that was part of the intent there. Now, they actually wanted a SWAT arrest of me, and you're saying, that's not true. My nephew told me, once I was finally released, put under house arrest, that he had seen a SWAT team staging at the elementary school near my father's house. So again, why they didn't come and get me on Friday night or Saturday night, I can't tell you.
And okay, so now you're in prison and jail. Right. So what happens now? When you out and?
All right. So, all right. The first night was in jail just by myself, and then the next morning these same two FBI agents, and they were so cute, trying to play good cop bad cop on a guy that's been through resistance training, or trying the whole military buddy routine. I mean, what a bunch of clowns.
Yeah.
And I say that from the bottom of my heart. All right, so I go to be arraigned, and I'm arraigned that day, and then they put me in the Parker County Jail, which is the federal portion. Now I immediately got thrown into solitary and kept by myself for 4 days, which was fine. I was let out once, and here's the really crazy part. All right, so they allowed me to walk around inside of a gym with nothing in it except a couple of basketball goals. Okay, nothing in it. But there was a 13-gallon trash bag. No trash cans in the hallways, no trash cans anywhere else. And I've often wondered, was that 13-gallon trash bag left in there for me to put over my head and kill myself? I'm sorry, but it's just it didn't belong there. I don't think it was an accident. There wasn't any trash in it. It was a brand new, pristine
mental
bag.
games. They're just playing games with you.
Well,
absolutely.
You said you've been through the training. You understand that kind of stuff. I mean, it's psychology.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I didn't know whether or not I was going to get out.
Torch, have you talked to a lawyer at this point during the 4 days?
No, the FBI lied to me and told me that I was going to be allowed to talk to a lawyer, but no, I was not allowed to speak to one until the day before the hearing to determine whether or not I was going to go under house arrest or I was going to be, kept in prison. Now, with just misdemeanors, because I was initially just charged with misdemeanors, the judge, based off of my service history, decided to let me go under house arrest. But at this hearing on the 14th, I believe his name is John Moore, Special Agent John Moore of the FBI, lied in court. Now, I say lied. Really, are you a grad by chance?
No, I did not go to the zoo.
So
ROTC.
the honor code, the honor code, what did we call it? Quibbling. So if you make a statement that doesn't tell the full truth so that it can be perceived as a lie, that's called quibbling, and it's a violation of the honor code, and that's what Special Agent John Moore did.
So just talking around the truth then, or not
Correct.
The truth. Okay.
Yeah. And remember, and what is that oath you swear when you get up on the stand? To tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I think that's it. I'm pretty sure that's it. And then he proceeds to quibble about, what the different patches mean. He tried to paint me, probably at the direction of the U.S. attorney, as a vigilante who brought zero weapons, who protected the president. And then that is where the U.S. attorney initially lied and said that I brought the flex cuffs. He said, and this was curious, because at the time we didn't have the video that proves what I was saying was true.
Okay.
That I picked the flex cuffs up. But he said that, either by opportunity or because he had brought them, he intended to use them to hurt Vice President Pence. So the U.S. attorney said, again, quibbling, lying. And by that point, I am certain they had seen the video of me picking it up, but they just didn't give it to my defense lawyer until about a year and a half later.
Okay, so you have this court, and is this when they send you to be on house arrest? After?
Yeah, so they had asked for me to remain in jail. Instead, the judge let me go home and be on house arrest. So I was on strict house arrest for the next 7 months. I was only allowed to leave for work, medical appointment, or church. Those three things. That's it.
Did you have like an ankle monitor on, or?
I did.
Really?
I call them Biden manacles. Yes. So, but yeah, I had to wear a Biden manacle for 7 months. And so, another beautiful Texas summer gone. And then eventually Judge Bates relented, and again, I have to give credit to the probation department here in North Texas. This guy, and I think he actually just retired. He knew the whole time this was a joke. And so he was pretty...
Well, I was going to say, you're in Texas. Texas is more God country, red.
If I had to give thanks to one thing, I would say that, both in Texas and in Missouri, I encountered good people. It makes me want to never leave a red state ever again. As a matter of fact, I will probably have to transit a blue state like to get to Florida, but I don't think you're going to see me leave any red states ever again.
Well, we'll welcome you over here.
Yeah, you should be able to get Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi. You'll be okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true on the drive there, because I don't fly anymore because I've been branded a terrorist.
And just hop on I-10. Yeah, hop on I-10 and come east.
So
Florida.
You're in house arrest, and so you had a job. I mean, nobody fired you from your job. And
no,
family?
I resigned, but I was going to get fired if I didn't resign.
Okay.
I worked for a small private airline that did work for the U.S. government, and so it's the ironies are just overwhelming. And so but at the time, I had so much time off as a pilot for that organization that I decided to become a home inspector. And so literally I had a second career lined up. It took me, a couple of months to train myself to the level where I felt smart enough to do it. And then I had the good fortune of having a good friend, and the guy still is a good friend to this day, teach me the ropes, if you will, of the business and how to do that, and how he ran his business. So I ran a home inspection company until I went into prison in May of 2023. And, honestly, it was a God thing because I tithed, the 10% I was supposed to, and my business, mushroomed overnight to where I had more work than I could handle. As a matter of fact, had I not been thrown in prison, I was about to hire another inspector to start helping me with all the business I was generating. It was a good thing.
Okay. So did you end up in the DC gulag at all?
No, I never went there, and I'm very lucky. By the time I actually went to trial, the government didn't immediately want me arrested. I'm sure they regret that now. And so they allowed me to surrender myself to Springfield. So I never was inside the DC gulag. Now, I was in prison with a man named Taylor Jonatakis in Springfield, who spent a lot of time in the DC gulag. And if I might, just a quick segue, this is what his judge told him before a single juror had been impaneled. He said, "Mr. Jonatakis, you're going to spend a long time in prison." Okay. I mean,
that's
opening arguments,
bad.
no.
Yeah.
Jury being seated, no. And the judge is already telling me he's going to spend a long time in prison. Taylor's got a great case for a mistrial, but it's just that's
so
what you face.
Is Taylor
as
still in prison?
American.
Torch? Is Taylor?
Yes, ma'am. He is.
Oh gosh.
He is.
Okay. So you have the case, and now they're like, we're sending you off to Missouri. I guess that's where you were in prison.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, eventually, I have a quick 3-day trial. There's a bench trial. Now, I do want to talk about two things on that. Again, the government lays out all of its evidence, and it went through, the Facebook post that you read about in the Air Force Times in horrifying detail. Again, private conversation between me and a friend of mine. I want you to take your worst conversation you've ever had and imagine it being aired publicly. All right. That's what happened to me. All right. So in my trial, something did come up. I'm sure you remember, or both of you at some point can quote, When any form of government becomes destructive to those ends, it is their right, it is their duty to alter or abolish it. Talking about that form of government that's destructive towards life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, that's in the Constitution, I think, or I can't remember if it's the Constitution or the Declaration.
Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, so the Declaration, they're quoting that
you have a duty.
Me in an American court, to an American military officer in front of an American judge. My lawyer looked at me and said, "Are you believing this is happening?" I'm like, "No, I don't believe this at all." The second thing I want to bring up is what's called the raindrop theory, and it stemmed from they're using this against January 6ers. Now, previously, prior to January 6th, Americans were judged for their actions, not the actions of a crowd. All right, but This is a novel theory where they say, that each individual participant in a riot is like a drop of water hitting a field, and the whole field is wet on the basis of the bad, water that's there. So again, I was not judged based off of what I had done. I was judged off of January 6th and what occurred that day. And, the judge cited this raindrop theory, and I look forward to seeing that, just sitting there in his court when he's being tried for violating conspiracy charges and listening to the raindrop theory, because when any federal judge or U.S. attorney, impinges the rights of any American citizen, it wets the whole field. So again, it's just beyond frustrating. So he sentences me to 2 years in jail. All right. I report on Memorial Day. Again, a lot of people say, well, were you upset to be reporting on that day? That day is for soldiers that died. It's not for men like me and you two that fought, that served the country and did not die in combat. It's for men that gave and women that gave the ultimate sacrifice. So it didn't necessarily bother me that, the whole thing, having to go to prison, bothered me a lot for really what should have been a misdemeanor trespass charge. So, I go in there, and my intent was to conduct a hunger strike until McCarthy released all the tapes. Now, 4 days I had eaten nothing, and I finally got out of prison or out of solitary confinement because they had to keep me there, some COVID nonsense, whatever. And I called home and was told that Speaker McCarthy had agreed to release the tapes. Well, again, I know that there's a lot of, let's be honest, what a politician says and what they do are two different things almost all the time. And so I continued my hunger strike, albeit slowly. Eventually, I lost 66 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Over the course of about 3 months. So,
wow.
I was intent on what I was doing, and I was informed by Springfield medical personnel that they were about to start doing things to me that I really don't want done to force feed me. So, again, I basically decided to stop at that point. So did I wimp out? Yeah, I guess a little bit. But at the same point in time, I lost 66 pounds. I ate one meal a day, and that's it. Just enough to keep going. So, I'm not really that upset about it. Now, something else happened is I read a book by Commander Hugh Stafford. I'm trying to think of the name of the book right now, but it was sent to me by a relative of his, and it detailed his time in North Vietnam. So again, we've probably all either read, When Hell Was in Session, or Robbie Reisner's book. I can't think of the name of it right now. We know about Stockdale. We know about Jeremiah Denton. We know about Robbie Reisner. So Hugh Stafford was one of the commanders that worked for of one of the different flights, the 4th Allied POW wing, POW wing. So what I made the decision to do is, and a lot of people don't know this, but 260 defendants amongst the J6 1,500 right now, almost 1,500, are military guys. So I decided that I was going to form the 5th Allied POW wing. Now, in obedience to the code of conduct, and, you can say, oh, he's being delusional considering himself a political prisoner and equating that to being a prisoner of war. That's fine. You're free
Not at all.
But I view myself as being a political prisoner of a hostile selected president. And so, again, I formed the 5th Allied PPOW wing. Now, the 4th article in the Fighting Americans Code of Conduct says, at one part of it, if I am senior, I will take command. Well, to my knowledge, I am the senior ranking officer. And so I issued guidance that somebody, a friend of mine in the J6 network, put out, and it went out into every prison. And that's what they had a problem with. And that guidance was stay loyal to President Trump, have faith in the American people, use this time to educate yourself, and trust that this injustice being done to you is going to be overturned. I can actually send you that, the email that actually went out, and it got paraphrased and sent into prison.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll send you that, as well as the incident report that I got on the back side of that. So that kept me in solitary confinement in the hole, if you will, for 131 days. Now, all of that wasn't in solitary, although I wish it was at times, because they put an absolute madman in there with me that was psychologically unsound.
Oh, really?
To the point where they eventually removed him for psychiatric observation and then transferred him away. This guy was just flat out dangerous. Now,
so he was trying to hurt you, Torch, when you were in prison?
No, he never tried to hurt me because I'm 6'3" and he's about 5'6".
Okay.
But I do have to sleep, and I'm trapped in a cell with that guy for 23 straight days. So again, it was, you just have to trust that things are going to kind of work out. So also, they tried to transfer me. Now, again, my background as a military guy, and they did too. And you're saying, how did they know? Because all the guards would come up and say, man, I want to shake your hand, but they'll yell at me if I do. So again, I got lucky to go to a prison in Missouri with good MAGA guards, but they tried to transfer me to what's called the Communications Management Unit in Terre Haute, Indiana. Now, in that prison, there are a large percentage of Al-Qaeda or actual domestic terrorists there. And so they wanted me to walk the yard with those guys. Now, this fits a narrative. The captain of Springfield, he was previously at a federal prison where they would do things like put, skinheads in with a Jewish guy, and the Jewish guy got beat to death. So again, in my opinion, he did that on purpose to try and get me transferred there. And he was eventually denied 9 days after my uncle wrote a letter saying this is tantamount to the BOP giving, Lieutenant Colonel Barak a death sentence. So because they couldn't send me to Al-Qaeda, guess what they did when they have an actual member of Al-Qaeda show up at Springfield? They put him sleeping less than 6 feet from me.
Oh! Okay. I gotta ask a question. Are you writing the book? Because
yes.
Are you writing the book? I'm like, holy. Okay.
There's no coincidences here, are there?
No
Torch,
coincidences
have you talked to
at
anybody else like you're talking to us? I mean, this is the most. I've interviewed. I don't know. I'm like 1,000 people now, and this is probably my most riveting interview. That I'm on edge and I need whiskey, and I don't even drink whiskey.
All right. Well, whiskey is good. As a matter of fact, I know you're going to be shocked by this. I look forward to a good Jim Beam Black and Coke Zero tonight. That's a standard fighter pilot drink. It's either that or Jack Daniels. All right. So
you're in a cell with Al-Qaeda, dude.
All right. Well, okay. But at that time, I had gotten out of the hole, and I was in a barracks area. All right. So now the barracks area, they put him sleeping 6 feet from me. Now the odds of that happening, all right, because I was like, I was like, I bet you that's less than 1%, because there's 3 pretty much, living areas. And so I did the math, and there's 512 beds, and there's 5 that are close to me. So less than 1% chance that was random. Huh. So they knew what they were trying to do. Now, here's the really cool part of this story. Their own guards called and complained so loudly, and so many of them, about what they had done, putting him next to me, that they moved him. You're saying, well, how do you know that? Because I was told that by one of the lieutenants there and by somebody else that I can't mention these people's names.
No, I don't want them in trouble.
Because they're still working for the BOP. Yeah. I want them to continue to protect the J6ers that are in prison.
Right.
And, like I said, they'll get in trouble themselves. But I promise
how long were you with the Al-Qaeda dude? I mean, what was he, like an American that was radicalized, or who was he?
No, he was a Pakistani citizen that had been in Britain, and he
organized a bombing attack on both New York, London, and I believe Stockholm. That was supposed to occur simultaneously.
Well, that's peachy. Torch.
Yeah, he was arrested by MI5, and then the United States, extraordinary rendition, brought him to the U.S. to stand trial.
And how long were you having to share quarters? Yeah, who is he?
5 days, because the guards moved him after 5 days.
What? Okay.
So, yeah, it was funny because a couple of the prisoners that I was friendly with, they're like, yeah, we saw you over there sleeping with your flashlight trained on him.
And what's his name? Is that releasable? His name?
Yeah. His name is Abid Nasir. You can Google him.
Okay.
Or it might be Nasir Abid. Forgive me. You'd think I'd have this memorized, but it's Naseer, and then it's Abid, and it's either one of them is first name or is other.
So did he engage you in the 5 days?
No, we talked briefly. I don't know that he knew I was a military guy and what my background was. I knew what his background was instantly because the guards told me.
Oh,
so we're not prisoners aren't supposed to know that unless they reveal these details to each other. But I was told. So
I'm glad to hear there's actually some people out there that have some common sense. That
yes.
even see beyond the political theater.
Because what we've heard about the Washington Gulag, like the food was rotten and the way they treated the prisoners, it was horrific.
Well,
I mean,
that's still going on. As a matter of fact, just the other day, Congress had a panel away from the Hill, and there was testimony brought up that they're not doing that. And one of the congressmen, forgive me, I don't know his name. It wasn't MTG or Chip Roy. It was another, I can't think of the guy's name, but he tried to go into the D.C. prison and they wouldn't let him in. Again, it's a gulag being run by a socialist government, and we have this in America right now, and to our everlasting shame, nothing is being done to stop it.
Yeah.
So you're in this prison, so you got to stay there and finish out your time. Is that correct?
It is, but if I might add one more little thing, that you're going to enjoy. All right, so while I was in prison, obviously, there are a lot of appeals going on. And so Congress actually changed the law where if you had 0 prior offenses, which I didn't, then you got a sentence reduction. But I also won an appeal that reduced my sentencing guideline from 12 to 15 months. Now, the judge mistakenly, I'm not so sure it was mistakenly, but he didn't allow for good time and what's called First Step Act time. And so he turned down my release pending appeal, in early April, which enabled the Springfield Gulag to place the Al-Qaeda guy next to me. But by that time, he knew that the 1512 was going to be overturned because oral arguments had happened in March, and almost everybody said it went horribly for the government.
Right.
So, and he also already knew that I had served my sentence, but he also knew that by doing nothing, he could get his full 2 years. So he chose to not let me out, and he chose to let me serve my full sentence. So I served 2 years. Now, when the felony was overturned, and it wasn't actually technically overturned by the Supreme Court, but they've narrowed the definition of it so much that I can't, there's no possible way they could find me guilty of it. Let me back off of that. It is D.C. They can find you guilty of anything. We don't have legitimate court of law there. All right. But my guideline, if the 1512 felony goes away, all right, and then with the sentence reduction based off of 0 priors and the sentence reduction based off the appeal, my sentencing guideline would have been 0 to 6 months. So this judge left me to rot for 4 times the sentencing guidelines. Now, keep in mind, this is against the backdrop of all these other criminals, like the people that beat, rape, or murder, the illegal invaders being released into our community. But, if you're a J6er, you get to serve 4 times the sentencing guidelines. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the lawsuits once he's stripped of his civil immunity as well.
So I was he like an Obama appointee? Or, obviously.
I wish I could say that. G.W. Bush.
Really?
I'm sorry, H.W. Bush.
Really?
Bush, yeah.
I can't believe
that whole circuit, there is nothing good about that entire circuit. I've written letters to congressmen and senators asking them to use what's called the Holman Rule to defund that circuit in its entirety. You cannot get a fair trial as an American there. Again, I had a bench trial. I don't think we talked about this. And the reason I did that is my jury pool is 96% Democrat, 96% for Clinton, 95% for Biden.
Yeah, I
so
would
I
have done
had no
bench,
chance of a fair trial.
Right. And did you have any allies? Did you have a Congressman Gates? Who was fighting for you on the outside?
Honestly, it's embarrassing. The only people I had really fight. Okay, there's a whole network of J6 Patriots, and they contribute money to your commissary account, which helps you a little bit, and it does. And then they also write you letters while you're in there, but. In terms of congressional allies, no, the Republican Party is deaf as an adder with one or two exceptions. Gate, MTG, and then honestly, Senator Josh Hawley contacted my folks because, he's Missouri. And my parents, when they couldn't get a hold of me when I got thrown in the hole for 10 straight days, they contacted Josh Hawley, and he's the only senator that replied back to them. So, again,
really?
and let me tell you something else. A man just got out of prison, and again, they were trying to keep him, another J6 guy. They said he had missed a class, and he hadn't missed it. They were just saying it to try and keep him in prison for another 11 months at a cost to you, the U.S. taxpayer, of $40,000. And I recorded on X a video, and I sent it to Representative Alford, and who's his representative, as well as Senator Schmidt and Senator Hawley. And I'm happy to tell you that Senator Hawley and Representative Alford took action. Now, again, it could have been because the family contacting them. I'm not giving myself any credit here, but that man was released from prison this past Monday. And so I'm very happy to see some Republicans are starting to come around on January 6th.
So is McCarthy to blame? Because why didn't we get these tapes, for a long time?
Well,
I mean, who's to blame besides the Dems here?
McCarthy and now Johnson are both to blame, but that being said, they're being told, well, safety and security. And so they need to that's the petard they hang us on all the time. Well, we can't tell you this because it's for your safety and security. Well, I view you as my threat. I need to be safe and secure from you, the U.S. government. And so it's their fault for not listening to that. And I also think, and again, here's what I believe we'll see. If they were to really give us all the tapes, really give us all of them, we're going to see FBI agents or operatives in MAGA gear inside the Capitol before the initial breach. How are they going to explain that?
Well, and they may not give you the tapes because we have, hold on, John, we have Terry Strada, she's the national chair for the 9/11 families, and it's taken them 23 years to get information. So that's the frustration.
No, you're absolutely right.
Go ahead, John.
We may not get it.
So what do you think would happen if this information gets out? I mean, the fact that you basically have the government conspiring against its own citizens. I mean, it's just so fundamentally. I just almost can't even rationalize it in my brain. I mean, it just seems so foreign to me.
I agree. I mean, I feel that way too. But what do I think would happen? I think you would see a massive effort to scale back the FBI's involvement domestically. Honestly, I think they need to be broken into multiple pieces. I can tell you right now, were I a sheriff of a county, I would immediately rescind their ability to arrest anybody in my county. I do think I would like to see the governors and attorney generals push back and deny the FBI the ability to arrest anyone because they're essentially a tool of the Democratic Party right now. But you asked me what would happen. Now, again, it's unthinkable. We are in unthinkable waters. I mean, okay, you guys, forgive me, I don't know how old you are, but I'm old enough to remember when there was an assassination attempt on Reagan. To my knowledge, that was the last assassination attempt on a president. Here we've had 2 and possibly 3 if that IED today with Trump. I've heard rumors that might have been a training exercise. you and I both know from our time in the military, you don't conduct training exercises when the game is on.
No.
You know,
exactly.
that you're not going to have a
never.
Not in this
false
environment. Not in this environment.
So I think they're
especially
trying to
after
hide
2
that
times.
one because it's too
Okay.
too much at this
But
point.
again, it gets into what I'm saying. And, I'm like you guys. I promise. I swear I don't want to believe these deep conspiracies, but I'm seeing too much. How do you explain Ralph with all of his crazy connections? How do I explain an IED, on President Trump's motorcade? I said on Saturday, if you follow me on X, that they were going to hit him with an IED. And then I backtracked off of that, and I got to really thinking about it. I put some brain bites into it. But again, I told you I have an evil brain. And I was like, how could this be done? And I was like, the only way to do it right now is via drone. So that's what is terrifying me right now, is that they use a drone with an explosive and try and fly it at high speed right towards the president. So, I mean, I literally posted, I hope President Trump's, has good team has shotguns around to help protect him from drones. I'm terrified they're going to take him out.
I was making a comment earlier that maybe Eric Prince, maybe Trump needs to hire Eric Prince in Blackwater to protect him instead of the U.S. government.
He needs something else.
And I've been saying that for days on X, that he needs former Navy SEALs and Green Berets that we can trust, that to protect him. So are you like on probation now? Do you have to check in with some? I don't know anything about the prison system. I've gotten two speeding tickets in my life.
Yeah, well, I had more than that, but I always hired a lawyer to get rid of them. So, fighter pilot, what do you expect?
Exactly. I know that type.
I move fast in a car.
That's
so.
Right.
All right, here's the crazy thing. Because of the appellate court mandated that my judge reduce my sentence, and that happened on March. And again, like I told you, he just chose to sit on it. He has to re-sentence me even though I've completed the 2-year sentence. Now, why do I want that to happen? Because it gets rid of the felony. All right, that felony makes it to where I can't vote, I can't bear arms.
Oh.
In the state of Texas, there's a ton of limitations that are imposed on me for that. So, again, I want that to go away. As soon as that goes away, as far as I'm concerned, we're done until the lawsuits happen and until we start bringing these judges and lawyers to trial for their criminal actions. So, again, that's what I want to – go ahead.
Well, I have
I'm on probation.
You're on probation. Okay. So do you check in with somebody? Do you high five somebody once a month?
All right. So she just came and visited my parents' house the other day, and then I've got to check in with her before I change jobs or get a place or anything like that. So doing all that, they got to drug test me. I don't care. I don't do drugs. It's not anything.
Okay.
You can drug test me.
But you're on X because you have your show, The Reckoning. That's how I bumped into you, and I'm in love with that show today. It was on fire.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, and then are you back to being a home inspector? Is that what you're doing now?
No. I can't really say yet what I'm doing because the company is going to come out on the 1st of October. It's supposed to be revealed, but I'm working for a company that is a software company offering encrypted chat and VoIP.
Good. Okay.
And I'll talk a lot more about that in the days to come.
Yeah.
Right now I'm working as a consultant with them.
Okay.
That being said, that pays the bills.
Good.
I would, I don't like anything being taken from me, and so I want all of my licenses back to include my pilot's license. Now, I'm not stupid enough to think, the thing is, as a J6er, you'll never get hired in corporate America. We are on our own, literally. Yeah. I don't think anybody would hire me as a pilot because of my record in January the 6th, just because of all the negative press that's
Well, they need to watch the video that I watched today. So.
Yep. Now, I appreciate you mentioning that show. We're going to try and continue to grow that.
It's awesome,
tomorrow.
Actually.
Tomorrow we've got, like I said, J.D. Rivera on, and we're covering a lot of this military stuff about January 6th, as well as just some stories that people don't know. Like I talked about the 4 deaths. There was a woman that was beat in the head 30 times by an officer with a metal baton that day.
Oh,
all right, and she couldn't get out. She tried to get out of the tunnel, and they pulled her back in and beat her more. I wish I was making this up. Again, it's all on video to see, but the mainstream media doesn't want you to see it.
And then, did you have a family before all of this? And talk about family and faith is what I want to know.
Okay. All right. So I've been a Christian since, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, as we used to say. I walked down the aisle to profess my faith at, 13? And, I'm your typical fighter pilot. I cuss and I swear and I like women, but, I was, by and large, I'm still a dedicated Christian. I understand I am a sinful and fallen man. However, I do trust that God will save me. And so I do profess, my faith in Christ there. That being said, you ask about family. Man, I ran into a bad second wife. The first wife was my fault. I lost my marriage because honestly, we just grew apart. And then, she had real problems with my hand being in the air every time, a deployment came up to go to war.
Okay.
And it was, that's a sacrifice that some women can make and others can't. And I'm going to be brutally honest at taking a shot at myself. If I cared about my marriage, I wouldn't have gone to Afghanistan the second time. And I knew it, and I still chose to go. So it's my fault completely. In my defense, and I said this before we ever got married, that I'd loved her for a few years, America, all my life, and that I would always, volunteer to serve. And so, she kind of knew what she was getting, but I don't think she really knew what she was getting. All right. Now that's faith and family. My second wife's terrible. Here's the worst thing that I've lost after, January the 6th. A family court judge down here in Texas believed all the media lies and refused to let me, took away my ability to see my son. Now, initially I voluntarily agreed to it because I was receiving death threats and I didn't want my son to, obviously get targeted. But then she wouldn't let it go ever until the divorce decree was signed. And even then my ex will not let me see my child. I took my ex to court in front of the same judge, Judge Lindsay Wynn of the 468th Court in Collin County, Texas, and she will not let me see my son. I don't know what to do at this point, except save up some more money, go in front of her. But honestly, I've talked to various lawyers. I've talked to that have appeared in front of her court. I've talked to fathers advocacy groups. They all say I'm throwing my money away until she's gone. But in the meantime, years 7 through 10 of my son's life, I'm missing.
Well, we'll pray for you on that. So when it comes to the government, I've been saying this, that I pray Trump gets in because I feel that our nation's going in the wrong direction. And I've said this several times on the show that I want J6ers to get reparations because I especially, what everybody's gone through, it seems insane. You were an Air Force fighter pilot, I don't know. I don't think what you had to deal with equated to walking through a door at the Capitol. It just seems it seems insane. So, are you hoping that Trump gets elected and this will all turn around and we'll get some J6 justice?
Yes. Now, again, anytime you start talking reparations, people think you're being greedy. Here's the two things that I really, really want. All right, I want a pardon of innocence to the J6ers that deserve it. And again, there is a group called the Patriot Pardon Project that has gone through every case that a J6er has to date and provided guidance to President Trump. Now, I'm going to be very blunt. If you physically assaulted an officer prior to, and there are several Antifa guys that did, prior to them doing anything to you, you deserve to be in jail. Again, both things can be true. We can have bad guys in our crowd, and they can have bad policemen hitting us. But if you did things like I did, no, you don't deserve what happened to you. We need a pardon of innocence. Okay. The second thing I want is justice. We cannot let this happen in America again. And these judges willfully and deliberately, did whatever the DOJ wanted to create a political prisoner class in the United States. And they need to be removed from their courts, and they need to be made civilly and criminally liable so that we can charge them with crimes. There's 2 crimes that are there on the books. And I thought, And you're right to say, who are you, a lawyer? You don't know anything. You're right, I don't. But the guy that runs the Article 3 project is a lawyer, and he says they can be charged because they've acted outside of the scope of their duties as federal judges. So again, that will all be determined in court, but as it should be in the American system. But we cannot ever allow a Department of Justice to go this rogue, and the only way to stop that is to go after and punish every man and woman that has participated in this crime against conservative Americans.
So do you think your training at the academy, being a fighter pilot, helped sustain you during this time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's faith and family, and it's sure, like, it's crazy. One of the articles or papers that I wrote as I think I was a junior at the academy, it's called a 2 degree, but I wrote a paper on the Article 5 of the Code of Conduct and how it had evolved over time. And so the Code of Conduct, viewing myself as a political prisoner of a hostile government, it sustained me through there. My training as a military officer, in the Resistance Training Laboratory of SERI, obviously, definitely gave me, I'm going to call it, a tool set to deal with these morons that were trying to interrogate me in the FBI and inside prison. And then, I may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm not the dullest one either. And so, I can pretty easily tell what somebody's trying to do. And they were just so ham-fisted about what they were trying. It was laughable, honestly. All right. So, the academy and being a fighter pilot prepared me. And then, what I talked about just in brief, the fact that no matter what anybody says about me, and believe me, there was a hurricane of negative publicity. You saw some of it, the Air Force Times and all this other stuff. Okay, but the same thing that makes you a fighter pilot, that internal locus of control, that I don't care what you say, I'm still better than you type of attitude. I know I'm not better than my fellow Americans in any way, except I've done some things that make it to where I feel I have the opportunity to prove that I'm a quality man. And what I mean by that is I am the guy that risked my own life to save the guys on the battlefield multiple times. And there is nothing that the government can say that can take that away. I also know that I remain loyal and faithful to the United States Constitution, which they violate routinely. And so, again, I don't care that they call me a criminal. The judge says, well, he's shown no remorse. What is it I'm supposed to show remorse for? Seriously, I protected police on that day. I lived up to the Constitution. I peacefully and patriotically protested. I broke no laws on that day, other than ones that they have manufactured and that the Supreme Court has now tossed. Again, parading and picketing, they could charge half of America with that. It's a clown show.
Okay,
right?
so do you think Trump's
know what
gonna?
I have to be remorseful of.
Yeah, do you think Trump's gonna win in November, and we can take it all back, clean up all? I mean, we have so much to clean up, Torch. So much to clean up.
All right, I'll be honest with you. I have days where I feel like he will win, and today is one of those days. And then I have days like the rig is already in, or they wouldn't have put such an incompetent candidate out front.
A communist on top of that. A communist.
I mean, I don't know. Now I monitor the micro things. You heard on my space today. 100,000 illegitimate voters were scrubbed off the rolls in Arizona.
Right.
It's actions like that that are going to save us. I've got somebody from Trump Force 47, that I talk to daily about this. I went and talked to the Republican Party here about serving, but I can't as a convicted felon. That being said, I can do the job as a precinct chair. I just can't get any of the recognition for it, which I don't think there's any. I mean, you get no recognition for it. It's just a job you do to help the party. But, I'm not allowed to register voters in the state of Texas, which is what I intended to do when I got out of prison, because you have to go and be I think they call it like a registration sheriff or whatever, but you have to attend a class. Well, guess what one of the conditions of that class is? That you not be a convicted felon.
Oh, gosh.
So I literally can't do anything. Oh, well, what about going to Mississippi or Louisiana and registering voters? Well, for the first 60 days while on probation, you're not allowed to travel outside of your area. It doesn't stop.
Veronica knows Colonel West, who's the chairman of the Dallas County
Yeah.
GOP.
I'd love to talk to him. Tomorrow on a podcast, I'm talking with Debbie Georgatos, who's the RNC, the Texas representative to the Republican National Committee, and then I've also spoken with the chairman of the Texas Republican Party here. So I'm trying to dig in and get active. So
Alan West has a show too, so I'm happy to connect you there.
Please connect me. I'd love to talk with him.
So is there, reflecting back, you sound so positive and upbeat, and, we definitely, John and I would go to war with you. What can you tell America? Was it worth it, in the end? Because now you're on the other side of this glacier, and, or is America so effed up that if Kamala wins, I don't know what's going to happen here. Honestly.
Are we at the point? If we pass the tipping point, that's my concern.
Yes.
If we pass the tipping.
I'll like I told you guys, I have days where I think one way and days where I think another. Is it worth it? Now that is a really good question. I don't know the answer to that yet, and here's why I'm going to answer it, in a quibbling type of way like that.
We don't like quibblers, Torch.
No, I can't see my son now.
Okay, well, we're
I'm
going to
say all right. So I will pick a side then, and the answer is yes, it was worth it. And here's why it was worth it. I said that I would protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They stole the 2020 election. They are domestic enemies for violating the Constitution. All right. Now, I don't want to see them shot or anything. I just want to see the laws changed to where we restore our nation. Again, I talk all the time about the need to restore the republic, and we truly do. And honestly, only Donald Trump can do that. So, I hate to say this, but his election is going to answer your question. He can do it, but again, once he gets in office, the list of tasks. I actually asked Jake Novak the other day. I don't know if you tuned into that show, but what are the top 3 things that need to be done? And it's, one, he needs to fire the top level of bureaucrats inside Washington immediately. That's like step 1. Step 2 is to close the border and begin a massive deportation program. And, my mind, step 3 is to automatically put, if you can, a lid on all these boiling wars that we have going on around the globe.
Yes.
And, we can sit and we are so close to World War III. We're just one errant, I talked about it today in my newscast, one errant missile away, from hitting a Russian school or a Russian theater or something, an old folks home, and, to where maybe a TAC nuke gets used in the Ukraine, or the war expands over there. Again, it's too risky right now. And America, I believe that all Americans vote, their pocketbook first, and then they vote for peace. And Trump is the candidate that can give them more money and give them peace. Kamala can do neither of those two things. So whether or not we can overcome the rig, I don't know. I pray that we can.
And then final question, do you have a motto that, besides Jesus being in your heart,
well, I say it at the end of my little newscast that I have every day called the Distant Early Warning. When Kyrie at Mori, victory or death. We have to win. There is no, I'll be honest with you guys, you live in the Free Republic of Florida. I live in the Free Republic of Texas. And, I don't know that we're going to stay a part of the United States if Kamala wins. I think you're going to see a massive Texas program start here. And I don't know how you guys feel in Florida, but, she's going to just do things that are so beyond the pale that I think the country will absolutely dissolve. And I'm not alone in thinking that. I think when they come and start actually seizing weapons, it might wake the rest of the people up that aren't awake already. But I don't know why they're
always
not
be
awake
packing
already.
here in the South is my motto.
And the thing in Florida they have to get past is the sheriffs, who are all constitutional officers in the state of Florida,
here,
and none of them will enforce any federal rules or laws about seizures.
I
hear what you say, but hold on. Let me ask this question: will they stop it though?
Oh,
There's a difference between enforcing and stopping it.
Here they will.
Yeah.
Will they arrest the FBI agents that are going in to take guns? Oh, well, we've decided that Colonel Brock is, he's not a felon anymore because he got that pardon. But we've decided using red flag laws that he shouldn't have guns.
Yeah, we're working
See
on
what
the
I mean?
red flag
That's
laws
what they're
here.
That's what they're going to do. That's
Right.
exactly how they're going to say it. I can see it happening right now.
Well,
anyway,
we're going
So
to
Florida has
really
a constitutional amendment to protect fishing and hunting on the ballot this year. Okay,
just for fun, Torch. That's on the ballot.
About our guns and fishing.
Well, listen, thank you guys for having me on and letting me tell my story.
Yes,
fascinating.
Pray for the country. Do everything you can to elect President Trump. We've got less than 50 days until, America lives or dies.
Well, we've been talking with former J6 prisoner, Lieutenant Colonel Larry Torch Brock, and you're still on probation. Your story's incredible. I've been honored to have you on, and your spirit is unwavering, and we are going to win it in November. And I plan to join I'm going to invite you back, and then I'm going to join your space too. So
and Torch,
feel free to talk. We don't have enough people asking questions yet, but yeah, definitely raise your hand and talk up. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Torch,
God bless
I just want to
you.
say, it's an honor to talk to a real American.
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad there's some left.
I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you.
God bless you, Torch, and thanks for joining Veronica
You too.
Live.